Welcome to our final lesson dealing with the suit of wands. Having dealt with cards, the numbered cards 1 to 10, this lesson concludes with the 4 court cards, the page, the knight, the queen and the king of wands. So I'll actually be referring as normal to the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, but I'll also be referring to 2 other decks, basically to illustrate how court cards can vary in different types of decks. First, I will be using a modern rendition of the Golden Dawn Tarot, but I will also be referring to the classic Aleister Crowley Thoth Tarot, which was illustrated with incredible beauty by Lady Frida Harris. So, beginning with the lowest and the youngest member of the tarot court, the page of wands. Now, traditionally, pages are represented by the element of earth, but in this case with wands we are also dealing with the element of fire. So court card personalities actually draw a lot of their characteristics from that combination of elements. So in this case, the page of wands is what we would refer to as the earthly part of fire, or earth of fire. So this is actually where I want to show the other 2 decks. The difference between the Rider-Waite-Smith deck and the Golden Dawn deck is that the Waite-Smith Tarot follows the much older pattern that you see in Marseille decks with the court cards, whereas namely you will have a page or valet, a knight, a queen and a king. The Golden Dawn and the Thoth Tarot actually made a departure from that. In the case of the page, rather than having a page in the Golden Dawn deck, you have a princess. It's the same in the Thoth Tarot. This figure, this is also depicted as a princess rather than a page. Think of the court as a progression. I mean, in our standard tarot court, we have the page, who is a servant and a messenger, the knight, who fights basically from a place of conviction, but also in servitude to his king and queen. And then obviously the 2 authority figures, the queen and the king. The page, basically as a servant, basically acts under orders. So you're not dealing with somebody who is acting from any sense of their own personal conviction or from their own sense of personal thought. They're being guided, they're being directed. So in that respect, what we're dealing with is the least thinking and the least mature member of the court. So archetypally, pages or princesses in real life symbolize children or young people. Basically they symbolize a state of youth and immaturity. So, the earthly part of fire, page and princess. What we've got on the traditional page image, you can see here, basically a page bearing a wand. There is a flame motif in his hat, obviously representing the element. The element is also expressed through the design on his vestments, which are embroidered with figures which look like salamanders. Now that is the mythical fire lizard. So again, it's a symbol of the element. Everything in this card, apart from the sky, is oranges, yellows, the fire colours. We're in a desert, which is denoted, you can see the 3 pyramids, so there's a kind of Egyptian feel to this, paying homage to the kind of, the Egyptian myths, that, for years were, misguidedly sort of attached to the tarot, but it's quite a nice touch. It does denote that we're in a hot, fiery desert kind of scene anyway. So what is this figure? as a servant of the realm, the court of the King of Wands. He's a messenger. We're talking a youth figure, a child. So in practical terms, in terms of messages, herald of new beginnings, like the ace, but at the same time, this is actually a new beginning that actually comes in the form of a person. This is much more human than the Ace of Wands, put it that way. So this is somebody who's about to embark on that new creative or work journey. It's somebody who they're basically on a learning curve and a growing curve. They need guidance. They need boundaries. They need to be told where they're going. So this in effect is somebody who is learning artistic skills. It's somebody who basically goes into a new job and they're on the training course. It's also somebody, think of that person who comes into your life and actually guides you into a new area. Maybe somebody who comes, in my case, it was actually somebody who sent me a newspaper clipping with a job advert. And that job advert led not only to a change of career, but also to a change of location. And it led me to, it led me to a second phase of living in London for 8 years. So, that person was my Page of Wands. They bore that message, they bore that job offer. Actually, as a person themselves, this is somebody who is actually experiencing, this is a child. Think the archetypal child filled with wonder at what's going on around them. This is somebody who kind of has a passion for life, but they also have, a wide-eyed awe and innocence of what's going on around them. Now, bear in mind that with the realm of wands, not only are we in the realm of work and creative energy, we're also in the realm of, we're in the realm of libido and sexual energy. So obviously there's something very overtly phallic here. This is the archetypal adolescent physically. This is somebody who's awakening to their emotional and sexual desires. That's in the upright. If it's reversed, if you take the childlike aspects, if you're looking at the dark side of this character, take the childlike aspects and, this could be an adult that is very immature, but at the same time refusing to grow up, refusing to step into responsibility, disobeying orders, not delivering the message, it can be all of those things. There's a stubbornness, because fire is a very ferocious element. There is also stubbornness in this reverse character. So think of a petulant child, a spoilt child, a stubborn child. But then, we can all still carry those traits as adults. This can be the person in the work team that basically refuses to be the team player, that resists change, that wants to stay where they are. This is the person that obstructs change or forward movement when we're looking in the reverse. It's the sulking work colleague, the non-team player. So there you have it. Now, let's look at the variations. If we go back to the Princess in the Golden Dawn deck, the elemental aspect of this figure, the earthy side of fire, that comes over here. Let's explain the figure of the Princess to start with. The difference with the Golden Dawn and with the Thoth is that pages and knights are replaced by princesses and princes. So actually what we have is 4 royal figures. We have more of a gender balance. I think you can still interpret them in a similar way, because I think, I tend to think of the princess as a royal envoy. So she will still bear the message. She's also a youth figure. She's not a direct authority figure. In terms of the earthy side of fire, if you're thinking of these figures, both the page and the princess, think of them in elemental terms. The earthy side of fire is actually the fuel that ignites. So think of firewood, think of coal, anything that burns, combustible chemicals, That's one of the other aspects of this personality, page and princess, volatility. Think of a firework, light the blue touch paper, wham, it explodes, because there is that immaturity as well. So there is an aspect of not necessarily being able to control your awakening emotions and passions. So hence the need for guidance and the need for boundaries, and, the need to be nurtured in this card as well. It's interesting with the Thoth depiction, I think, is very beautiful, because the princess is kind of entwined to a tiger. So it kind of shows you the ferocity of when those passions and emotions kind of get out of control. And you can see, this is a very fiery card. She's swept up in the flames, so she's not necessarily actively in control. She's swept along by the tide of her passions. And also you can see on the altar there is burning wood, but burning fuel, whatever. Again, it is that combustible, volatile aspect of this personality. Going back to the page again, we see that with the flame in his hat. Where there should be rational thought, there's fire. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's so much good can come from that, but there is a light and a dark, a positive and a negative, the good and the bad in all of us. Okay. Let's move on to the Knight, because with the Knight, we're moving a stage up in maturity. Think in literal terms, think young adult, not necessarily somebody who is ready to take an authority or management position, but actually somebody who can think for themselves. They have very firm beliefs, very firm convictions. They'll fight for those convictions. That's very much the case with the Knight of Wands. Again, because fire is the most volatile and passionate of the elements, this is the most passionate of the Knights. It's interesting because whereas the page has a flame in his hat, that's implied on the Knight's helmet. I mean, they're potentially ostrich feathers, at the back of the helmet, but they look like flames, and that's what they're supposed to depict. When you look at the way the Knight's vestments and, look ragged, but actually they also, if you look closely, the edges of those vestments are, fanning out like flames. They're flame shaped. There are flames, seemingly from the back of his vestments as well. This is a very, very fiery, very volatile Knight. The horse is leaping. The horse's mane is even flame shaped. Fire is implied basically in every part of this Knight, and the horse's posture and in the costume. Again, salamanders on his vestments. Same scene, incidentally, but from a slightly different angle. There's the desert and the pyramids. So, it's same environment, progression to the next stage of maturity. In real terms and in archetypal terms, this is somebody who, what can we say about this figure? This is somebody who storms in and turns everything upside down. This is somebody who will set your environment on fire for better or for worse. If you're thinking in practical terms, that's somebody who comes into a workplace with, zealously reforming ideas, and do they storm in, and they do it. They're not comfortable to be around a lot of the time. Keeping up with them is difficult. In a creative sense, this is somebody who's completely consumed by their creative vision, and they've got huge amounts of energy to make it work. You think of the idealistic and enthusiastic and driven art student. That's your kind of energy. Emotionally and sexually, oh God, I mean, this Knight basically will give you the ride of your life. You get on a roller coaster if you get romantically or sexually involved with a figure like this. It's passionate. It doesn't necessarily run deep, but by God, it sweeps you off your feet. A devastatingly good lover doesn't mean to say that they're going to be staying the course. But, Relationship, sexual relationship, emotional relationship, it's turbulent, it's exciting, it's storming. What else can we say about that figure? They don't come in quietly. You know when this person actually appears in real life, because they appear with an explosion. They sweep everything up. They disrupt. They reform. They upset. They tread on toes. For better or for worse. This is not good. The dark aspect of this is somebody who actually, they're so engulfed in their vision, they just don't care. They leave a trail of destruction behind them. Their fiery and disruptive nature is not even necessarily with purpose. This is somebody who likes drama, likes trouble, likes to upset. They've kind of lost touch with their own energies, and they don't control their own energies. And actually, it's disruption for disruption's sake. It's not with a vision anymore. They just kind of like the disruption. On a romantic and sexual level, you get involved with this person, you get your fingers burnt. It's short-lived, it's fast, and you come off for the worse, basically. This person, again, in the reverse aspect, is not mature enough to, handle their own inner fires. They will be volatile, quick-tempered, bad-tempered, ignitable. They fly off the handle. Same with the page or the princess, like the blue touch paper. It's implied there, but very much with this knight in reverse. Yeah. Approach at your peril. Actually, if you see him storming towards you, probably best just to get out of the way. We've all met people like this. Reformers, the archetypal reformer, can be a very powerful and positive figure, but they have to have a certain level of maturity and integrity. Without that, just get out of the way, because you'll be bulldozed, you'll be burnt to the ground. So, looking briefly, let's just look at the Golden Dawn. I mean, as we had the princess in the Golden Dawn in the Thoth, it's we have the prince. In this case, the princes are usually depicted riding chariots, interestingly enough, rather than horses in the Golden Dawn and Thoth tradition. The chariot is drawn by a lion, which again is one of the the ultimate fire symbols, both esoterically and so yeah, this is a with the knights, you're dealing with, knights are always ruled by the element of air, incidentally. So air in the realm of fire is actually quite, you can see why this is potentially a perilous figure, because flames fanned by a gale force wind spread very rapidly. Hence, I mean, the chariot drawn by the lion is very swift. And, you can see here he's winged, again, which symbolises that combination of air and earth. There's a similar image with the Thoth. Frida Harris actually really managed to kind of give a sense of scorching fire with these, as you can see. Very swift moving. So yeah, approach with caution, and sometimes get out of the way if necessary. Okay. So, moving on to the Queen. We've dealt with the two servant figures, or the two immature or youthful figures. We're now dealing with the maturity archetypes. Queens across all three of these decks are queens. There is no difference. The symbolism, may be slightly different in these decks, but the general sentiment is the same. Let's look at the Rider-Waite Queen first. She is dressed in yellow. She's enthroned. Her throne is carved with a combination of sunflowers and lions, both fire symbols, obviously. She's holding a sunflower. So for me personally, this actually connects her very closely with the Sun card in the Major Arcana, amongst others. I would also connect, she also has aspects of, of all, the female figures in the tarot. The Empress, I would say she has more of an aspect of. There's bits of the High Priestess in there. If you think of sacred fire, spiritual fire, you can see where I'm coming from. If you think of fire as transformative and recreative, then, there are, the fire of life, the life force, there's some of the Empress in there as well. But obviously all of these things come into a human form when you get into the court cards, and very much with the Queen. Interestingly, she doesn't have fire within her crown, but the crown is living and growing. There's greenery sprouting out of that crown. So this is, queens are reigned by the element of water, which makes her a very interesting figure, because fire and water generally don't mix, so there's a kind of conflict going on here, but hence the greenery, the verdancy. That comes very much from the sort of, the softening influence of water, I would say. What else can we say about this Queen? The cat, the black cat at the foot of the throne. That gives her, for me, an element of the Witch Queen. There is, I kind of see her almost in a sort of pagan Wiccan way. Think of like the old path, the old energies. This is if there is a kind of witchcraft element here, it's kind of, it's drawing on those positive earth energies maybe, as well. Yeah, this is, she can be the Wiccan wise woman for me. That's a subjective view. Okay. What else can we say about it? Interestingly, the pyramids again, if you look closely. So, 3 of these 4 cards so far, they're all in the same, almost the same location. The throne, the arms of her throne are carved as lions. The back of the throne shows the lions, actually again reinforcing her element. She is, look at her posture. She sat, unusually for a female figure, she sat very boldly with legs open. Now, to me, that is a very provocative pose. But think of the elements, water of fire. So the watery part of fire, that immediately evokes to me, molten rock, lava, flowing fire. She has been described as the fount of sexual energy. Think of all of those fire energies flowing out from this figure. So it's the feminine aspect of fire. Very, very powerful. Yeah. She is, again, a devastatingly passionate, overtly sensual, passionate and sexual female energy. If you meet a woman like this is a woman who actually has a lot of maturity and authority, but what makes her so formidable is her passion and her authority, and her femininity, her sensuality, her sexuality are all worn on her sleeve. You do not forget a woman like this. A woman like this walks into a room, they have immediate presence, and it's a presence that kind of gushes out. You're almost sort of caught up in that energetic flow and swept along by it. If you're thinking of a woman expressing creativity, this is somebody whose artistic ideas and creativity and inspiration really flow spontaneously. And there is also a spontaneous way in which she gives birth to that. It's the passions behind her creativity are very powerful. Her ability to give birth to that and give it form are also equally powerful. Let's just actually, before we look at the dark aspects of this queen, let's have a look at how this is depicted in the Golden Dawn. The black cat becomes a leopard. Again, there's a ferocious cat-like energy in this. The Thoth card equally shows the leopard. She's crowned. Let's just have a look. Is that, pardon my rather bizarre reading glasses, let me have a look at this. She's crowned by a winged leopard's head on this Golden Dawn card. And actually she has a breastplate of a winged leopard's head, and her shin guards actually show the same symbol. So she's really owning that energy. Not only does she own it, she uses it as a protection. So this queen actually will use her fiery energy to keep people at bay, you know. So that's kind of part of her formidable nature. She doesn't always want you to come too close, but then other times, you know, she's overtly, you know, that fire, you know, she's looking for that fire to swallow you up. The Thoth card kind of, I mean, you know, it's shockingly energetic. And interestingly, what I love about this, if you look at if you look at her hair, her long hair actually forms two upside down cups, and the fire is flowing out of it, which is very interesting. So this figure is formidable in the upright. God, I mean, if you reverse her, very, very frightening indeed. This is somebody who, yeah, this really is a volcanic eruption, and if you think of a lava flow, you literally just have to get out of the way. You know, you'll be incinerated. We've all met people like this. You know, that kind of energy can be all consuming. It's interesting because in one of my other favourite decks, the Heimdall Tarot, which uses divinities to depict the court cards, Hermann Heimdall chose the goddess Kali to depict the Queen of Wands, and that is the archetypal dark, destructive feminine force. And I think, yeah, that is the dark aspect of this queen. You know, fire is such an intense element, and you know, when it's not flowing out with integrity, or when it's flowing out with malice or violence, very dangerous. Authority figures like this in the reverse, it's frightening. You know, you're into the realms of, you know, these are very warlike figures in the reverse, very actively ferocious, oppressive. You know, an authority figure like this will basically use their formidable fiery energy to burn their opponents, or to destroy their opponents, or to get rid of their opponents. Have we come across people like that in work? Yeah, I think we have. I certainly have. Yeah, there is a kind of, you have to beware with this figure, like all of the fire court cards. You know, such great positives, but then, you know, there is also, yeah, fire burns. So let's look at the king, the male authority figure. I would say this is the most ferocious potentially of all the court cards. Kings are represented by the element of fire, but then we're in the realm of fire anyway, so this is pure fire, unadulterated fire in this figure. Interestingly, there is lions carved on the back of the throne, but there are also the salamanders carved on the back of his throne. His crown, his golden crown, is shaped like flames. The wand, again, the sprouting staff, as all of these court cards have had. He's on a raised platform, which kings kind of have to keep their emotions in check. So even though this is kind of an erupting fire, but at the same time, as an authority figure, he kind of has to keep that in check, be slightly removed, hence the raised platform. His cloak, again, is embroidered with salamanders. Yeah, it's interesting with this king. Think of fire in spiritual terms as well. The king is, you know, he is the mature male authority archetype. So in the realm of fire, whether it's spiritual fire, whether it's emotional fire, sexual fire, work energy, artistic energy, think of this guy as the wise elder, the experienced elder, the mentor, the guide, the passionate guide. You know, this is somebody who's reached maturity, who burns with passion for everything he believes in. But basically, the upright king will guide you benevolently, will share the fire and inspiration of his wisdom with his subjects. I find this potentially one of the most difficult figures to come to terms with, because it's so difficult for a king who has to keep his energies in check to actually keep fire reined in. Reversed, this is literally the fiery tyrant, you know, who rules by force, who cuts, burns, and razes to the ground. You know, this guy doesn't share wisdom. This guy doesn't guide benevolently. You know, he takes the oppression of the Ten of Wands and he enforces it. This isn't fire of inspiration anymore. It is literally fire of oppression. You know, in the upright, this can be a tremendously inspiring figure. You know, we've all had those kind of work managers, you know, that inspire us to bring, you know, you want to work for them because they you know, they make you feel good. They literally, you know, incite the fire of enthusiasm in you. And then, you know, you want to do the job for them because they make you feel good about yourself. The shadow side of this king does not make you feel good about yourself. You know, he demands everything. You know, you know, whereas the upright is the wise, sagely mentor and guide and motivator, and, you know, somebody that you really respect. I mean, upright, there's no respect for this guy. You know, he's just an oppressor, a slave driver. Not nice to be around. It's interesting. The kings are the most complicated when it comes to the court cards. The reason I have these three decks here is because, unfortunately, we have three variations. In the Golden Dawn deck, we still have a king. Kings in the Golden Dawn deck, whereas the princes, which are the equivalents of the knight, are shown to be driving chariots. The kings in the Golden Dawn iconography are shown on horseback, but they are still referred to as kings. It does give you a great sense of the ferocity. I think the fact that they are shown on horseback, it shows you the drive of fire, whether it's in fire or in the other elements. It does confuse things a little bit with the knights, and that does get a little bit more confusing again when you get into the Thoth deck, because there are no kings. The equivalent of the knight in a Rider-Waite in the standard deck is the prince in the Thoth. Confusingly, he gets rid of the term king and actually refers to them as knights. Now, the best explanation of this I've seen was in one of Rachel Pollack's book. Do read Rachel Pollack. She is one of what I consider the two godmothers of modern tarot. Incredibly wise woman, very insighted, has been working with tarot since 1971. And as far as I'm concerned, you know, if you read her or if you read Mary Greer, you're basically reading the wisest women in tarot. She was talking about the Thoth knights, and her theory was that Crowley was basing his court system on the basically the medieval concept of courtly love, where the queen is wooed by the knight and basically you know, becomes united with the knight and begets the prince and the princess. What it does is it does put the queen as the primary authority figure within the court, and it subjugates the king, the traditional king figure to her, because he's depicted as a knight. It does get really confusing when you're working, if you're new to the Thoth deck, because it would be tempting to think that, the knight is, equated to the knight in a standard Rider-Waite deck, but in fact he is equated to the king, and you can see that from the Golden Dawn. A lot of Crowley's symbolism derives more directly from the Golden Dawn than the court symbolism does in the Rider deck, even though it does, that comes from the Golden Dawn as well. But the fact that, the knights and the kings in these two decks are both on horseback shows that they are the same figure. But yeah, the king is a formidable figure, for better or for worse. I think in the Suit of Wands you really see the potential for good and evil, in the upright and the reverse, because the force of the element of fire is so much. So I think in some ways the reversal of these cards is a lot more black and white than you see in some of the other suits. But there we have it. That brings us to the conclusion of our journey through the suit of wands. Do bear in mind these are my personal reflections, so it's not complete, and what I encourage you to journey into these cards yourself and form your own conclusions, even if they're different from mine or you feel I've missed something out. But I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've learned from it, and in our next lesson we'll be moving on to the suit of swords. If you've enjoyed this lesson and found it helpful, please hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel to find out when I share new videos or go live. You can also find me on Instagram at Chris Butler Artist, on Twitter at Butler Tarot, and on Facebook at The Sacred Tarot. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.